He abandoned her at the hospital, but froze when she appeared in court with triplets and a lawyer. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. Lina Moreira hurried through the crowded Boston streets, clutching her worn backpack against the October chill. The afternoon sky was already darkening as she rushed toward the Massachusetts General Hospital, where her shift as a clinic assistant would end just in time for her to catch the red line to MIT for her evening class. Another day, another sprint, she muttered to herself in Portuguese, a habit she couldn't shake even after 3 years in the United States. At 27, Lina had mastered the art of existing in perpetual motion, working 30 hours a week while pursuing her master's degree in biomedical engineering with a focus on maternal health technology. The clinic was buzzing with its usual afternoon activity when Lina arrived, slightly breathless. "There you are, Doctor." Karen Miller greeted her. "Mrs. Patel is waiting in room 3. Could you get her vitals before I go in?" By 6 o'clock, Lina's feet ached as she clocked out, her mind already shifting to the project presentation she would deliver to her advisor in 2 hours. Her phone buzzed with a text from Victor. "Dinner at my place after your class? I'll cook." A smile spread across her face. 8 months into their relationship, and Victor Hayes still gave her butterflies. The Harvard Business School student had quite literally bumped into her at a campus cafe, spilling coffee on her only professional blazer. What had started as an apology coffee had blossomed into the most serious relationship of her life. The subway car rocked gently as Lina reviewed her presentation one last time. Her maternal health monitoring system could potentially identify pregnancy complications days before clinical symptoms appeared. The prototype algorithm had shown promising results in the initial testing phase using anonymized patient data from the clinic where she worked. Dr. Eleanor Patel's office was a cluttered sanctuary of academic pursuits, books stacked on every surface and whiteboards covered with formulas and flowcharts. "This is remarkable work, Lina," Dr. Patel said, examining the data visualizations on Lina's laptop. "Your algorithm's predictive accuracy for preeclampsia is impressive even at this early stage." "Thank you," Lina replied, her Brazilian accent still noticeable despite years of practice. "I believe with further refinement we could potentially create an early warning system that could save thousands of lives, especially in regions with limited access to prenatal care." "Like Brazil?" Dr. Patel asked with a knowing smile. "Exactly." Lina nodded. "My aunt nearly died from complications that could have been prevented with better monitoring. That's what inspired this project." It was past 9 when Lina finally arrived at Victor's luxurious Beacon Hill apartment, a place that still made her feel slightly out of place with its polished hardwood floors and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Boston Common. "There's my brilliant Brazilian," Victor greeted her with a kiss, his blonde hair perfectly styled even at this hour. At 29, Victor Hayes embodied the quintessential American success story, 4th-generation Harvard, heir to a modest fortune in pharmaceuticals and already fielding offers from Silicon Valley venture capital firms. "Sorry I'm late. Dr. Patel had a lot of feedback on my project," Lina explained, setting down her backpack. "Your little pregnancy app?" Victor asked, handing her a glass of wine. "I hope she liked it, though I still think you could aim higher with your talents." "It's not just an app, Victor," Lina corrected gently. "It's a comprehensive monitoring system that uses AI to identify patterns that human doctors might miss." Of course," he said, guiding her to the dining table set with fine china that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "It's a lovely hobby project, but with your mind, you could be working on something truly groundbreaking." Lina bit her tongue. She'd learned that arguing about the significance of maternal health technology with Victor was pointless. He viewed it as women's health, important but niche compared to the business innovations he was pursuing. 3 weeks later, Lina sat on the cold tile of her bathroom floor, staring at the pregnancy test in disbelief. 2 pink lines. Unmistakable. Her mind raced through calculations. They'd been careful, but not careful enough apparently. With trembling hands, she called Victor. "Can you come over?" "We need to talk," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. When Victor arrived an hour later, his expression shifted from concern to shock as she showed him the test. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice oddly flat. "Yes. 2 tests. Same result." Victor paced her small studio apartment, running his hands through his hair. "We'll resolve this," he said finally, his tone businesslike. "I know a very discreet clinic in Cambridge. I can make a call tomorrow." Lena felt a chill run through her body. "I'm not sure that's what I want to do, Victor." He stopped pacing, looking at her with genuine confusion. "What do you mean?" "Surely you're not considering." "Lena, you're still in school. You have no family here. This would derail everything." "I know the timing isn't ideal, but—" "Not ideal?" Victor interrupted. "It's impossible. I'm interviewing with 3 incubators in Silicon Valley next month. We're both at the beginning of our careers. A baby right now would be a disaster." The word disaster hung in the air between them. Lena wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly feeling very alone despite Victor's physical presence. "I need time to think," she said quietly. Victor's visits became less frequent after that night. His texts grew shorter, his calls rarer. When Lena finally decided to continue with the pregnancy, Victor's response was a non-committal, "I respect your choice," that felt anything but respectful. At her first ultrasound appointment, which Victor had been too busy to attend, Lena received news that sent her world spinning even further off its axis. "Ms. Moreira, I'm seeing 3 distinct heartbeats here," the technician said, turning the screen toward her. "You're carrying triplets!" Lena gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Triplets? Are you certain?" "Absolutely. See here, here, and here," the technician pointed. "Is there a history of multiple births in your family?" "Yes," Lena whispered. "My mother is a twin, and my grandmother had twins as well." It was information she'd mentioned to Victor months ago when discussing their families, information he had clearly dismissed as irrelevant. That evening she called Victor with shaking hands. "Triplets," she said when he finally answered. "I'm having triplets." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity before Victor finally spoke. "That's not in my plans, Lena," he said, his voice cold and distant. "My career is about to take off. I've already received offers from 3 incubators in Silicon Valley." "Victor, these are your children too." "Children I never agreed to have," he replied sharply. "You made this choice, Lena, not me." The weeks that followed were a blur of morning sickness, prenatal vitamins, and growing isolation. Victor's emotional distance transformed into physical absence. He stopped visiting altogether, reduced their relationship to occasional texts, checking if she was doing okay, messages that felt more like obligation than concern. At 24 weeks pregnant, Lena woke to sharp pains and a dampness in her bed. Terrified, she called an ambulance, then tried Victor repeatedly as she was rushed to Massachusetts General Hospital. Her calls went straight to voicemail. "Premature labor," the doctor explained. "We'll do everything we can to delay delivery, but with triplets at 24 weeks, you need to prepare yourself for a difficult road ahead." Hours into her hospital stay, as medications failed to stop her contractions, Victor finally appeared in her doorway. The sight of him brought a momentary relief that quickly evaporated when she noticed the leather portfolio tucked under his arm. "You came," she said weakly between contractions. "I can't stay long," Victor replied, remaining near the door. "I have a meeting with investors in an hour." "The babies are coming too early," Lena said, tears filling her eyes. "The doctors are worried." Victor's expression remained impassive as he approached her bed. "This isn't going to work, Lena. You and I both know it." "What?" she asked, confusion mixing with her pain. "You're not sophisticated enough to be the wife of someone destined to make history in the tech world," he stated coldly while Lena contorted in pain. An immigrant without a degree, with 3 babies? Let's be realistic. You'll just be a burden that will delay my potential." Lena stared at him in horror as he placed legal documents on her hospital tray. "Sign these papers," Victor instructed. "My lawyer assured me they're unquestionable. A foreigner like you, on a student visa, could never successfully sue me in American courts." "You can't be serious," Lena gasped as another contraction seized her. "These are your children, Victor." "Keep these children or give them up for adoption," he replied, straightening his designer tie. "Honestly, I don't care. Just keep my name off any birth certificate. I have a future to build." When the monitors began beeping urgently, signaling fetal distress, Victor simply gathered his Mont Blanc portfolio and headed for the door. "The doctors are coming," Lena called out desperately. Victor paused at the doorway, looking back at her one last time. "I'm sorry it came to this. You're a brilliant woman, Lena. Just not brilliant enough for the life I'm meant to have." As he disappeared through the door, medical staff rushed in, their urgent voices fading into the background as Lena's world collapsed around her. In that moment of abandoned vulnerability, as machines beeped warning signals about her unborn sons, she couldn't possibly know that 10 years later she would be standing at the helm of a billion-dollar company, looking Victor Hayes in the eyes not as a victim, but as his superior in every conceivable way. The sterile, fluorescent lights of the neonatal intensive care unit cast a harsh glow over the 3 tiny bodies encased in incubators. Lena pressed her palm against the clear plastic, the closest she could get to touching her sons. Miguel, Raphael, and Gabriel, names she'd chosen from a book of saints, a distant echo of her Catholic upbringing. Each baby weighed less than 2 pounds, their translucent skin revealing the delicate network of veins beneath, their tiny chests rising and falling with mechanical assistance. "You can talk to them," the nurse said gently. "They recognize your voice from the womb." Lena swallowed the knot in her throat and leaned closer to the first incubator. "Olá, Miguel," she whispered in Portuguese. "Mamãe está aqui. I'm here, my little warrior." She moved to the next. "Raphael, my sweet boy." And finally to the third. "Gabriel, my angel." Her voice broke as she added, "I promise I'll take care of you. We'll be okay." Back in her hospital room, Lena stared at the unsigned legal documents Victor had left. His words echoed in her mind. "A foreigner like you, on a student visa, could never successfully sue me in American courts." The cruelty of his abandonment was matched only by the practical nightmare she now faced. Her student visa would expire in 3 months. Her savings amounted to just over $4,000. And she had 3 premature infants who would require specialized care for months. The hospital social worker visited the next day, clipboard in hand, expression carefully neutral. "Ms. Moreira, have you thought about your options? 3 premature infants will require extraordinary resources." "They're not going anywhere," Lena said firmly. "They're mine. Without the father's support—" "There is no father," Lena interrupted. "Just me. And I'll figure it out." That evening, Dr. Eleanor Patel arrived unexpectedly, bearing a small potted orchid and a determined expression. "I heard what happened," she said, taking the chair beside Lena's bed. "One of my colleagues is on the NICU staff." Lena nodded, too exhausted for embarrassment. "I've been thinking," Dr. Patel continued, "your maternal health monitoring system is too valuable to abandon. We can arrange for you to continue your research remotely while you care for your children. And I know people who might help with your visa situation." Tears welled in Lena's eyes. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because your work could save thousands of lives," Dr. Patel replied simply, "and because no one should have to choose between their children and their future." 3 weeks later, with the triplets still in the NICU, Lena sat in a cramped office across from an immigration attorney who had agreed to take her case pro bono. "Your situation is challenging, Ms. Moreira," he said, reviewing her documents, "but your academic record is exceptional, and Dr. Patel makes a compelling case for your research's significance. We'll file for a visa extension based on extraordinary ability and public interest." Lena nodded, her eyes burning from lack of sleep. Between daily hospital visits and desperate job hunting, she'd barely slept 4 hours a night. The next morning, she interviewed remotely for an administrative assistant position at MedSoft, a small medical software company. "Your qualifications are impressive," the hiring manager said, "but this position requires office presence." "I can work unusual hours," Lena countered. "Early mornings, late nights. I'm feeding my babies every 3 hours anyway." "Babies? You have children?" Lena took a deep breath. "I recently had premature triplets. They're still in the hospital, but when they come home, I'll need to work remotely." There was a long pause before the manager replied, "I'll need to discuss this with the team." Miraculously, they offered her the job. Part-time, lower pay than advertised, but with the flexibility to work from home. Lena accepted immediately. 6 weeks after their birth, Miguel, the largest of the triplets at 4 pounds, was deemed ready for discharge. Rafael and Gabriel would need another 2 weeks. "How am I supposed to divide myself?" Lena asked the NICU nurse, panic rising in her throat. "I can't leave Miguel alone, but I need to be here for Rafael and Gabriel." "Do you have any family who could help?" the nurse asked gently. Lena shook her head. Her parents had died years ago, and her only sister lived in Brazil with 3 children of her own. The solution came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Pereira, her elderly Portuguese neighbor who had emigrated 30 years earlier, offered to watch Miguel during hospital visits. "Eu também fui mãe sozinha," the woman said. "I was also a single mother. We help each other." The day all 3 babies finally came home was both triumphant and terrifying. The taxi driver grimaced at the sight of 3 infant car seats. "Lady, I don't think all of those will fit." "They have to," Lena replied firmly. "We have no other way home." Her studio apartment in Roxbury, which had once seemed merely small, now felt impossibly tiny. The landlord had allowed her to replace the full-sized bed with 3 second-hand cribs, leaving just enough floor space for a desk and chair. The kitchen consisted of a mini refrigerator, a microwave, and a hot plate. That first night, the triplets cried in discordant harmony while Lena moved from crib to crib, changing diapers, offering bottles, swaddling and unswaddling. When they finally slept, she collapsed at her desk, opened her laptop, and worked on refining her health monitoring algorithm until the first baby woke again. This became her routine, caring for the triplets in 3-hour cycles, working during their brief periods of synchronized sleep, subsisting on coffee and granola bars. She learned to type with one hand while holding a bottle with the other, to rock a fussy baby with her foot while coding. Dr. Patel arranged for her to present her research progress via video calls, which often featured an unexpected cameo from a crying infant. "I apologize for the interruption," Lena would say, bouncing a baby on her hip. "Never apologize for being a mother," Dr. Patel would reply. "Just tell me more about these predictive patterns you've identified." As the triplets grew stronger, Lena began supplementing her income by creating custom data analysis programs for local medical clinics. "I can do it for half what the big companies charge," she would promise during phone calls, while muting the sound of crying babies. "But I need to work from home." Some days, the weight of her circumstances felt crushing. One evening, after nearly dropping Rafael because her hands were shaking from exhaustion, Lena sat on the bathroom floor and sobbed silently into a towel. "You can do this," she whispered to herself afterward, splashing cold water on her face. "You have to do this." The visa extension came through, providing a 6-month reprieve. The immigration attorney was cautiously optimistic about her chances for a longer-term solution. "Your research is your strongest asset," he advised. "Keep developing that system." When the triplets were 6 months old, still tiny for their age but meeting adjusted developmental milestones, Lena finally had an evening where all 3 slept for a blessed 3-hour stretch. Instead of immediately working or sleeping, she allowed herself the luxury of browsing technology news. That's when she saw it. Victor's smiling face on TechCrunch beneath the headline, "Harvard grad secures $2 million seed round for revolutionary prenatal monitoring system." Her hands trembling, Lena clicked on the article. Prenatal AI, founded by Victor Hayes, promised to revolutionize maternal care through proprietary algorithms that detect complications before symptoms appear. The description was eerily familiar, almost identical to what she'd written in her research proposal, which she'd enthusiastically shared with Victor when they were dating. The article quoted him, "I was inspired after volunteering in hospitals and seeing the tragic consequences of undetected complications." Lena felt physically ill. Victor had never volunteered anywhere. The proprietary algorithms described in the article sounded suspiciously like the early versions she had coded and explained to him, confident in his interest and support. But what truly twisted the knife was the article's final line. Hayes, a bachelor known for his single-minded dedication to innovation, declined to comment on his personal life, stating that some people are meant to change the world, not raise families. That night, while her 3 sons slept in their shared crib, the only one that still fit all of them, Lena sat on the cold tile of her bathroom floor and allowed herself to cry for the last time. She wept for the naive woman she had been, for the partner she thought she had, for the future she had imagined. When her tears finally subsided, she stood and faced herself in the spotted mirror above the sink. Her face was thinner, her eyes shadowed by exhaustion, but there was something new there too, a hardness, a determination that hadn't existed before. "Poor Miguel, Rafael and Gabriel," she whispered. "I will turn this pain into something greater than Victor could ever imagine. One day, he will look at me and realize I wasn't just enough. I was exceptional, and he was too blind to see." As she dried her tears that night, Lena had no idea that Victor's betrayal would become the catalyst that would transform her from a desperate immigrant student to one of the most powerful women in medical technology. The image of Victor's smug face on the TechCrunch article burned in Lena's mind as she wiped away her tears. She stared at her reflection once more, then switched off the bathroom light and returned to her cramped living space. Her 3 sons slept peacefully, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing within their mother. By morning, determination had replaced despair. Lena placed the triplets in their shared playpen and opened her laptop. With renewed focus, she pulled up her dissertation files and began reviewing her research methodologies. If Victor could build a company from her stolen ideas, she would create something far superior. "He took my past work," she whispered to herself as she typed, "but he can't steal my future innovations." 2 weeks later, Lena presented her dissertation progress via video conference. The triplets, now 7 months old, were mercifully napping in their crib just out of camera view. "Your real-time predictive models are remarkable, Lena," Dr. Patel said, reviewing the data. "The integration of machine learning to reduce false positives is particularly innovative." "Thank you," Lena replied, her voice stronger than it had been in months. "I've been analyzing the competitor systems on the market. Many of them, including prenatal AI, show alarming rates of false positives." Dr. Patel raised an eyebrow. "Prenatal AI? That's Victor Hayes' company, isn't it?" Lena nodded, keeping her expression neutral. "Their algorithm relies too heavily on single-point data. My system cross-references multiple biomarkers to reduce unnecessary interventions." "Have you considered what you'll do with this research after graduation?" Dr. Patel asked. Before Lena could answer, a soft cry came from the crib. Then another. Within seconds, all 3 triplets were awake and demanding attention. "I'm so sorry," Lena said, already moving to attend to them. "Don't apologize, doctor," Patel replied. "But do think about commercializing this work, Lena. It's too important to remain academic." 3 months later, Lena sat at her makeshift desk, the glow of her laptop illuminating her exhausted face. The triplets, now 10 months old, were finally sleeping through most nights. She had just submitted her final dissertation and was now officially a Master of Science in Biomedical Engineering from MIT, a degree completed entirely during the first year of her son's lives. No graduation ceremony awaited her. Instead, she celebrated by purchasing a single cupcake from the bakery down the street. She carefully divided it into 4 tiny portions. One for Miguel, one for Raphael, one for Gabrielle, and one for Mama, she said, feeding tiny bites to each baby before taking her own. They clapped their hands, delighted by the sweet treat, not understanding the significance of the moment. While the boys napped that afternoon, Lena pulled up public clinical trial data on prenatal AI's system. The patterns were unmistakable, a 32% false positive rate that was leading to unnecessary interventions. Women were being scheduled for early inductions and cesarean sections based on warnings that never materialized into actual complications. "This isn't just unethical," she murmured. "It's dangerous." With renewed purpose, Lena dedicated herself to refining her algorithm. She worked during naps, after bedtime, and in the pre-dawn hours before the triplets woke. Her living room became a strange hybrid of nursery and tech lab, a playpen surrounded by printouts of code, baby toys mingling with technical journals. By the time the triplets turned 18 months old, Lena had a working prototype of her improved system. She called it Materna Safe, an integrated platform that monitored multiple maternal fetal biomarkers and used advanced AI to predict complications with greater accuracy than anything on the market. "It's time," she told Dr. Patel during one of their regular check-ins. "I need funding to take this to market. You'll need a business plan, pitch deck, prototype demonstration, all the usual startup materials," Dr. Patel advised. "I can introduce you to some potential investors." The first meeting was with a partner at Boston Venture Associates. Lena had arranged for Mrs. Pereira to watch the triplets, but her elderly neighbor called that morning with a bad cold. "Bring them," Dr. Patel suggested when Lena called in panic. "Investors should see what you've overcome to build this." Lena arrived at the sleek downtown office 15 minutes early, 3 toddlers in tow. They were dressed in matching outfits she'd found on clearance, their curly hair carefully combed. She wore the only professional outfit that still fit her post-pregnancy body, a navy blazer over a simple white blouse and black pants. "Ms. Moreira," the receptionist said, eyes widening at the sight of the triplets. "Mr. Donovan is running a bit late. You can wait in the conference room." The 15-minute wait stretched to 30, then 45. By the time Mr. Donovan finally appeared, Raphael had grown cranky, Miguel had dismantled a pen, and Gabriel was trying to escape from their shared stroller. "Sorry for the delay," Mr. Donovan said, not sounding sorry at all. He glanced at the children with poorly disguised dismay. "You brought your family." "My sons," Lena confirmed, handing Raphael a silent toy. "Shall we begin?" She launched into her presentation, explaining the technology with clarity and precision despite the occasional interruption. When she reached the financial projections, a potential market of over $5 billion, Mr. Donovan finally looked interested. "Impressive research," he admitted, "but the funding you're requesting, $1.5 million, that's substantial for a first-time entrepreneur, especially one with such significant personal responsibilities." He glanced meaningfully at the triplets, who were now all fussing in the stroller. "My personal situation is precisely why this technology exists," Lena replied evenly. "I developed it while caring for premature triplets. If that doesn't demonstrate my commitment and capability, I'm not sure what would." Mr. Donovan's smile didn't reach his eyes. "A mother with 3 toddlers wanting to launch a startup? That's adorable. But our investors prefer entrepreneurs who can focus 100% on their companies." Lena gathered her materials with steady hands, though her heart raced with indignation. "Thank you for your time," she said coolly. "I'll find investors who recognize that mothers are exceptionally qualified to solve maternal health problems." This scene repeated itself, with variations across Boston's venture capital landscape. Over the next 8 months, Lena pitched to 67 potential investors. Some were politely dismissive, others overtly condescending. "Maybe focus on being a mom now and return to business later," suggested one Harvard MBA, patting her hand as if she were a child with an unrealistic dream. "And who watches your children while you work?" asked one of the few female investors, as though the answer might disqualify her. After each rejection, Lena would return home, put the triplets to bed, and continue refining her prototype. She trained herself to pitch in their small apartment, the toddlers mimicking her gestures and intonations in an unintentional parody that sometimes made her laugh despite her frustration. On a cold March evening, after rejection number 67, Lena sat on her worn sofa, scrolling through a business magazine on her phone. A familiar face appeared. Victor, looking polished and confident, labeled as the future of preventive medicine in a feature on rising healthcare entrepreneurs. The same day, she counted the coins in her emergency jar to buy milk for the triplets. That night, she checked her email one last time before collapsing into bed. Among the usual notifications was a message that made her sit up straight. From Sophie Chen, Horizon Ventures. Subject: follow-up on Materna Safe presentation. Dear Ms. Moreira, your pitch last week was the most compelling I've seen this year. The technology addresses a critical need, and your persistence in developing it while raising triplets demonstrates exactly the kind of determination we look for in founders. I'd like to discuss potential investment. Are you available to meet this Thursday? Regards, Sophie Chen, partner, Horizon Ventures. Lena read the email 3 times, her hands trembling. Then she looked over at her sleeping sons, their tiny chests rising and falling in peaceful synchrony. "We might have a chance," she whispered to them. "A real chance." The rejection number 71 would be the last that Lena would face, for what investor Sophie Chen saw in that determined mother with 3 energetic toddlers wasn't risk, but the kind of resilience that transforms startups into empires. Lena stared at Sophie Chen's email for what felt like the 100th time, still struggling to believe this moment had arrived. After 70 rejections, someone finally saw the potential in both her and Materna Safe. She glanced at the clock, 4:30 in the morning, and closed her laptop. In 3 hours, she would meet the woman who might change everything. The offices of Horizon Ventures occupied the 15th floor of a sleek building in downtown Boston. Unlike the imposing marble lobbies of other venture capital firms, Horizon's reception area featured warm lighting, comfortable seating, and, to Lena's surprise, a small corner with children's books and toys. Sophie Chen emerged from the conference room, a striking woman in her early 40s with an impeccable gray suit and a warm smile that immediately put Lena at ease. "Ms. Moreira, thank you for coming," she said, extending her hand. "I hope you found the place easily." "Please, call me Lena," she replied. And yes, though the early bus schedule with 3 toddlers was interesting. Sophie's smile widened. "I can imagine. My twins are teenagers now, but I remember those days vividly. That's partly why I wanted to meet with you." Inside the conference room, Sophie got straight to the point. "Your technology is impressive, but what truly caught my attention was you. Do you know what most men in this industry fail to understand, Lena?" Lena shook her head. That raising 3 children while simultaneously building a functional prototype is proof of extraordinary managerial capacity. Anyone who sees that as a liability rather than an asset doesn't understand what it takes to build a successful company. For the first time in nearly 2 years, Lena felt tears threatening to fall, not from despair or exhaustion, but from the simple relief of being seen. "My team has reviewed your technology," Sophie continued. "The accuracy rates are remarkable. What's your timeline for market readiness?" For the next hour, they discussed technical specifications, market entry strategies, and growth projections. When Sophie finally leaned back in her chair, her expression was decisive. Horizon Ventures would like to offer you $1.2 million in seed funding for 30% equity in Materna Safe. Lena's breath caught. You're serious? Completely. We'll need proper due diligence, of course, but I don't anticipate any issues. Do you have any questions? Lena had dozens, but one pressed forward. Why me? After 70 rejections. Because those 70 investors were idiots, Sophie said bluntly. They saw limitations where I see determination. Now, shall we discuss next steps? 3 weeks later, Lena stood before a nondescript office building in Cambridge, key in hand. The space was modest, a former accounting firm with 4 small offices, a kitchenette, and a conference room. But it was hers. The first real headquarters of Materna Tech, the parent company of Materna Safe. The triplets, now nearly 2 years old, toddled excitedly through the empty rooms, their footsteps echoing on the bare floors. "Mama work?" Miguel asked, pointing at the largest office. "Yes, sweetie. This is Mama's new work," Lena answered, fighting back tears. "And sometimes you'll visit me here." That evening, she hung 3 finger paintings on the wall of her office, colorful scribbles from each of her sons. The next morning, she welcomed her first employee, Jaden Park, a brilliant programmer fresh from MIT who had turned down offers from Google and Microsoft. "Why Materna Safe?" Lena asked during his interview. "My mother died from preeclampsia when I was born," he answered simply. "Your technology could have saved her." With funding secured and development underway, Lena faced her next challenge: finding reliable childcare. The Community Care Center in Roxbury had a subsidized program for low-income families, but the waiting list was 6 months long. "We had a last-minute opening," the director called one Wednesday morning. 3 spots, starting Monday. "Can you bring the boys in tomorrow for assessment?" Lena nearly dropped the phone. "Yes, absolutely, yes." That Sunday night, she laid out 3 tiny outfits, packed 3 tiny backpacks, and tried to ignore the gnawing maternal guilt. The next morning, as she led her sons into the cheerful classroom, Raphael clung to her leg while Gabriel immediately raced toward the blocks. Miguel stood between them, cautiously observing. "They'll be fine," the teacher assured her. "The first day is always hardest on the mothers." Walking away from her children for the first time since their birth, Lena felt physically ill. By the time she reached her office, she had called the center twice to check on them. "They're adjusting beautifully," the teacher reported. "Raphael has stopped crying and is helping with snack time." With the triplets in daycare 3 days a week, Lena's productivity soared. She reconnected with Dr. Karen Miller, her former supervisor at the Women's Health Clinic. "Lena, I've been wondering about you," Dr. Miller exclaimed over the phone. "How are those babies doing?" "Growing fast," Lena replied. "Listen, Karen, I'm developing a maternal health monitoring system and need anonymized patient data for algorithm validation. Would the clinic consider partnering with us?" "Of course you can use our data. I always knew you'd do something important, Lena. Send me the paperwork." The next 3 months passed in a blur of coding, testing, and refining. Lena often worked until midnight, occasionally sleeping on the office sofa rather than disturbing Mrs. Pereira, who watched the boys on non-daycare evenings. Her team grew to 4. Jaden handling back-end development, Sarah managing data analytics, Eduardo overseeing regulatory compliance, and Lena directing it all while continuously improving the core algorithm. Video conferences became a regular occurrence, often with unexpected interruptions. During one critical presentation to potential hospital partners, Miguel wandered into frame with an urgent question about dinosaurs. "Excuse me," Lena said to the bemused physicians on screen. "This is my son Miguel. He has important paleontological concerns that apparently can't wait." To her surprise, the interruption humanized her. The head of obstetrics at Massachusetts General Hospital leaned forward, suddenly more engaged. "My daughter was the same at that age," he said warmly. "Now, about this preeclampsia prediction module, the accuracy rates are remarkable. When could we begin beta testing?" 2 weeks later, MaternaSafe was installed for its first hospital trial. Lena personally trained the resident physicians on the system, explaining how it aggregated subtle biomarkers to predict complications days before clinical symptoms appeared. The algorithm isn't magic, she emphasized. It's simply recognizing patterns that human observation might miss. On the fourth day of the trial, Lena received an urgent call from Dr. Patel. "Your system flagged a patient this morning," she said without preamble. 26-year-old primigravida, 32 weeks gestation. No clinical symptoms, but MaternaSafe indicated high probability of severe preeclampsia within 72 hours. Lena's heart raced. What happened? We ran additional tests. Blood work shows early markers consistent with developing preeclampsia. We've started magnesium sulfate and corticosteroids for fetal lung maturity. The patient is stable and being monitored. So the system worked? Lena could barely breathe. It worked brilliantly, 3 days earlier than we would have caught it otherwise. Both mother and baby have significantly improved odds now. That night, Lena shared the news with her tiny team. They celebrated with pizza in the conference room, the magnitude of what they'd accomplished settling over them. "We saved someone," Sarah whispered. "We actually saved someone." Word spread quickly through Boston's medical community. Within 2 weeks, 3 more hospitals requested beta installations. By the end of the month, MaternaSafe had correctly identified 2 more cases of imminent complications, with 0 false positives. Sophie Chen visited the office after the 3rd successful intervention, taking in the growth since her initial investment. The once empty space now hummed with activity. The walls, still adorned with the Triplets artwork, now also featured flowcharts, data visualizations, and a growing map marking hospital installations. "This is bigger than we thought, Lena," Sophie said, examining the latest efficacy reports. "Much bigger. It's time to scale." "We need more developers, additional hospital partnerships, and regulatory fast-tracking," Lena agreed. "But that requires more capital," Sophie finished. "I'm already talking to partners about a Series A round. With these results, we could raise 7 to 10 million easily." Lena sank into her chair, overwhelmed. $10 million? "This is just the beginning," Sophie said. "You've created something that's saving lives in a measurable, documentable way. That's rare in the startup world, where most disruption just means slightly more convenient food delivery." That evening, Lena received a call from Massachusetts General Hospital. The patient with preeclampsia had delivered a healthy baby girl via scheduled cesarean. Both mother and daughter were doing well, lives potentially saved by early intervention. "Your system worked," the resident physician said, excitement evident in his voice. "It really worked." As Lena hung up, she looked at the photo of her 3 sons on her desk. The salvation of that first mother in Boston would be only the beginning. In 5 years, her algorithm would be credited with saving more maternal lives than any other medical innovation of the decade, and the man who had stolen her initial ideas would be watching helplessly as her meteoric rise eclipsed his own. The call about the successful intervention at Massachusetts General Hospital marked a turning point for maternity-tech. 3 years later, Lena stood at the podium of the Boston Medical Innovation Conference, her data visualizations commanding attention on the massive screen behind her. "In the 38 hospitals where MaternaSafe has been fully implemented, we've seen a 62% reduction in severe maternal complications," she explained, her Brazilian accent now a subtle lilt rather than the pronounced cadence of her early years in America. "More importantly, we've reduced emergency interventions by 47%, meaning healthier outcomes for both mothers and babies." The audience of physicians, hospital administrators, and investors listened with rapt attention. At 32, Lena Moreira had become a respected figure in Boston's medical technology landscape. Her once wild curls were now elegantly styled, her thrift store clothes replaced by tailored suits that projected quiet confidence. Only the observant might notice that her watch was still a modest timepiece rather than the status symbols favored by many of her peers. After her presentation, Lena navigated the reception with practiced ease, discussing implementation timelines with a hospital chain CEO and fielding questions from curious physicians. Yet even as she exchanged business cards and accepted congratulations, her mind frequently drifted to the 3 5-year-olds waiting at home with Mrs. Pereira. The board meeting the following morning presented a stark contrast to these public accolades. Seated at the head of a polished conference table, Lena faced 6 men and Sophie Chen, the only other woman present. Fourth quarter revenue exceeded projections by 18%, reported James Whitfield, their CFO. Hospital subscriptions are growing steadily, and the new insurance partnerships are proving lucrative. "What about the international expansion?" asked Richard Morton, one of their newer investors. "Are we still on track?" "We've secured regulatory approval in Canada and the UK," Lena confirmed. "Australia and Germany should follow next quarter." As the meeting progressed, Lena noticed Morton repeatedly checking his watch during her technical explanations. When she concluded her product roadmap presentation, his question took her by surprise. "This all looks promising, but I'm curious. Who handles childcare when you're traveling for these international launches?" The room fell silent. Sophie Chen raised an eyebrow. "The same people who handle your children when you travel, Richard," Lena replied evenly. "Competent caregivers." Now, about the clinical trial results from Toronto. Later that afternoon, Lena left the office early, a rare occurrence, to attend the Triplets kindergarten science fair. The classroom buzzed with excited 5-year-olds and proud parents examining crude volcanoes and bean sprouts in paper cups. Miguel stood confidently beside his display, a simple circuit board with flashing lights that responded to sound. While other children had parental help with popsicle stick structures, Miguel had built a rudimentary algorithm visualizer. "See, Mama?" he explained, his eyes bright with excitement. "When I clap, the pattern changes. I think we could make it better if we added more sensors to detect different sound frequencies." Lena knelt beside him, genuinely impressed. "That's brilliant, meu amor. How did you figure this out?" "I watched your coding videos while you thought I was playing games," he admitted with a mischievous smile. Across the room, Raphael had taken a completely different approach. His display featured dozens of colorful drawings showing the human heart from different angles, with surprisingly accurate depictions of blood flow. "Ms. Jenkins said I drew the best circulatory system she's ever seen from a kindergartner," he announced proudly, handing Lena a meticulously labeled diagram. "It's beautiful, Raphael," she said, examining the detailed artwork. "You've captured exactly how the valves work." Gabriel's project stood in stark contrast to his brother's. While they focused on technology and anatomy, he had organized a collection of donated baby items. "It's for moms who need help, like you did," he explained solemnly. "I told everyone how you took care of us all by yourself, and they brought these things for other mamas." Lena pulled him into a tight hug, overwhelmed by his empathy. "You have the biggest heart, Gabriel." That evening, as Lena helped with homework while simultaneously participating in a conference call with European investors, she marveled at how seamlessly her dual worlds had merged. The boys knew to whisper questions when she pressed the mute button, and she had mastered the art of reviewing math problems while discussing market penetration strategies. 2 weeks later, Lena stood in the empty living room of a modest 3-bedroom house in Cambridge. Sunlight streamed through bay windows, illuminating hardwood floors worn with character. "It's at the top of our budget," the real estate agent cautioned, "but the school district is excellent, and it's only 15 minutes from your office." Lena walked through the rooms, imagining the triplets each with their own space after years of sharing. The backyard was small but enclosed, perfect for active boys. The kitchen needed updating, but the bones of the house were solid. "I'll take it," she decided. "This is home." Moving day brought a flurry of excitement. The boys raced through empty rooms, claiming territories and planning decoration schemes. "I want planets on my ceiling," announced Raphael. "Can I have bookshelves everywhere?" asked Miguel. "Is there room for a donation box for the community center?" Gabriel wondered. Lena watched them explore, remembering the tiny studio apartment where they'd spent their first years. 3 cribs crammed against the wall, her desk wedged beside the kitchenette. The contrast brought tears to her eyes. As Maternitech continued to grow, Lena found herself increasingly in the spotlight. During an interview with the Boston Globe, the reporter asked about her inspiration. "My sons are my driving force," Lena answered, gesturing to a framed photo on her desk. "I built Materna Safe to ensure other mothers could safely see their children grow up, the way I've been blessed to watch mine thrive." Not all public interactions were as positive. During a tense negotiation with executives from National Health Partners, the largest insurance provider in the Northeast, Lena presented data showing how Materna Safe could reduce their claim payouts by millions annually. "These numbers are compelling," admitted Gerald Hoffman, their silver-haired VP of Innovation. "But implementation across our entire network would require significant investment. Perhaps we should start with a smaller trial?" "We've already conducted trials in 17 of your network hospitals," Lena countered, sliding a folder across the table. "Each dollar you invest in our system saves you $8 in prevented complications. More importantly, it saves lives." Later that week, the triplets visited Maternitech's expanded offices, now occupying the entire 15th floor of a Cambridge office building. The space featured an actual play area, a far cry from the days when the boys colored under Lena's desk during weekend work sessions. "Wow, Mama!" exclaimed Raphael, taking in the wall of awards and press clippings. "Your company is famous." "Our company," Lena corrected with a smile. "I couldn't have built this without you 3. One evening, while scrolling through industry news, Lena discovered that Hayes Medical Systems, Victor's company, was facing a class action lawsuit. Several patients claimed their monitoring system had caused unnecessary interventions due to false positives, exactly the problem Lena had identified years earlier. She closed the browser without comment, focusing instead on the proposal for Brazil's public health system. Bringing Materna Safe to her home country had been a long-term goal, and the health ministry had finally expressed interest. "My mother would be proud," she whispered to herself as she drafted the response. The Series B funding round exceeded all expectations. In a glass-walled conference room overlooking Boston Harbor, investors committed $30 million for international expansion, valuing Maternitech at over $200 million. "This is just the beginning," promised the lead investor. "You're saving lives globally now." That evening, Lena hosted a small celebration at the office. The team had grown to 28 people, each person raising a glass as she thanked them for their contributions. The triplets, granted special permission to attend, clinked their grape juice in champagne flutes alongside the adults. As she toasted with grape juice in champagne glasses with her sons, Lena didn't know that in just 2 years she would be on Forbes's 40 Under 40 list, nor that Victor Hayes was watching her rise with growing alarm, realizing that his empire was beginning to be overshadowed by hers. The Forbes photographer adjusted her lighting setup while the triplets fidgeted in their matching navy blazers. At 7 years old, they projected a coordinated chaos that somehow perfectly represented the Maternitech brand. Innovative, energetic, and unexpectedly sophisticated. "Can we include Mr. Bites in the photo?" Raphael asked, holding up the company's robot mascot that he'd designed himself. "Of course," Lena replied, smoothing his collar. "He's part of the family, too." The photographer positioned them against the sleek backdrop of Maternitech's headquarters, now occupying 3 floors of the Cambridge office building. "Perfect. The Forbes 40 Under 40 spread is going to love this family dynamic." Later that week, when the magazine hit newsstands, Lena purchased 5 copies. The cover featured tech luminaries and financial wunderkinds, but it was the 2-page spread inside that made her breath catch. "The Mother of Revolution: How Lena Moreira Transformed Personal Tragedy into Global Salvation." The article detailed her journey from abandoned immigrant to healthcare tech pioneer, though it tactfully omitted Victor's name. The centerpiece photo showed Lena surrounded by her sons, all 4 of them radiating confidence and joy. The caption read, "Morera with her triplet sons, the inspiration behind technology that saved an estimated 8,700 lives worldwide." That evening, Lena placed 1 copy in a sleek portfolio folder. Someday, she thought, they might want to understand their full story. 2 weeks later, Miguel returned from school unusually quiet. While Rafael immediately launched into a detailed account of art class and Gabriel unpacked donations he'd collected for the community center, Miguel slipped away to his room. Lena found him sitting on his bed, staring at a family tree worksheet. "What's wrong, meu amor?" she asked, sitting beside him. "Tommy said everyone has a dad," Miguel replied, his voice small. "He asked why mine isn't on my family tree. I didn't know what to say." Lena's heart constricted. She'd always known this day would come. The boys had asked casual questions about their father over the years, and she'd answered age-appropriately, explaining that he'd chosen not to be part of their family. But now, faced with peer questions and school assignments, the absence had become more concrete. That night, after dinner, Lena gathered all 3 boys on her king-sized bed, the same spot where they'd shared stories and secrets since moving to the Cambridge house. "You asked about your biological father today," she began carefully. "I think you're old enough now for more details." "Is he dead?" Rafael asked bluntly. "No, he's not dead," Lena replied. "His name is Victor Hayes. He's an American businessman who decided he didn't want to be a father when I told him I was pregnant with you." "Why not?" Gabriel's eyes were wide with incomprehension. "Doesn't everyone want kids?" "Not everyone," Lena explained gently. "Your father believed having children would interfere with his career goals. When he learned there were 3 of you, he made his choice very clear." "Did he ever see us?" Miguel asked. "Once, briefly in the hospital after you were born," Lena said, carefully editing the painful memory. "He signed papers saying he didn't want any responsibility for you." Rafael's brow furrowed. "So he just left? Because we would be too much work?" "Yes," Lena confirmed, seeing no benefit in sugarcoating the truth. "But his absence doesn't diminish who you are. Some families have 2 parents, some have 1, some have grandparents or aunts or uncles. What matters is that you're loved, not who provides that love." Miguel considered this seriously. "Is that why you work so hard? Because you have to be both parents?" Lena pulled him close. "I work hard because I love what I do and because I love you 3 more than anything. We're complete just as we are." Rafael picked up his sketchbook and quickly drew 4 stick figures, 3 small, 1 tall, with a circle around them. "This is our family," he declared. "It's perfect this way." The next morning, Lena arrived early for the Maternitech board meeting. The company had grown exponentially with 97 employees across 3 countries and annual revenue approaching $40 million. The boardroom, once intimidating with its polished table and leather chairs, now felt like a familiar battlefield where she'd won countless victories. Fourth quarter projections exceed targets by 23%, the CFO reported. "And we've just received final approval for the Canadian hospital network expansion." "What about Hayes Medical?" asked Richard Morton, scrolling through his tablet. "Their new system supposedly addresses the false positive issues." "Too little, too late," replied Sophie Chen, now Maternitech's chairwoman. "We've just surpassed them in total hospital installations. The latest industry report came out this morning." Lena allowed herself a small smile as she opened the report. The graph showed a clear crossover point, Maternitech's ascending line intersecting with Hayes Medical's plateau. After 7 years of competition, she had officially overtaken Victor's company. Later that afternoon, scrolling through industry news, Lena spotted a headline that made her pause. "Hayes Medical Systems faces new criticism over monitoring system reliability." The article detailed mounting concerns about false positives leading to unnecessary interventions. Exactly the problem she'd identified in Victor's algorithm years ago. The irony wasn't lost on her. Victor had stolen her early work, rushed it to market without proper refinement, and now faced the consequences of that haste. Meanwhile, she had rebuilt from scratch, creating something far superior. Her contemplation was interrupted by her assistant. Ms. Moreira, the National Healthcare Technology Conference called. They'd like you to be their keynote speaker at next month's event in New York. The keynote? Lena confirmed, surprised by the honor. That's their flagship annual conference. Yes, the theme is Disruptive Innovations in Maternal Health. They specifically mentioned they'd like you to share your journey from concept to global implementation. That evening, during dinner, Gabriel asked the question that had clearly been weighing on him. If we ever meet our father someday, what should we say to him? Lena set down her fork, giving the question the consideration it deserved. That would be entirely up to you. You might feel angry, curious, nothing at all, or something completely different, and all those feelings would be valid. Would you be mad if we wanted to meet him? Raphael asked. No, Lena answered honestly. He's biologically part of you. Curiosity is natural. I don't think I want to meet him, Miguel declared. He didn't want us. You might feel differently someday, Lena said. And that's okay too. There's no right answer. The following week, Lena appeared on Good Morning America, discussing Maternitech's new initiative to bring Materna-Safe to developing countries. Success isn't about money or recognition, she told the host. It's about impact. Every mother deserves the chance to see her children grow up, regardless of where she lives or her economic circumstances. The interview went viral, bringing new attention to Maternitech's global mission. Within days, international investors were calling, eager to support the expansion into markets traditional venture capitalists often overlooked. We want to bring Materna-Safe to countries where maternal mortality rates are highest, Lena explained during a meeting with Scandinavian impact investors, places where our technology could save the most lives. As her public profile rose, Lena remained vigilant about protecting her son's privacy. They appeared occasionally in carefully controlled media settings, but she declined reality show offers and limited their exposure to the business world to educational experiences. Meanwhile, in a sleek office overlooking San Francisco Bay, Victor Hayes sat alone, staring at the Forbes magazine spread on his desk. The photo of Lena, confident, successful, surrounded by 3 boys who were unmistakably his sons, had stopped him cold when his assistant had casually included the magazine with his morning briefing. The Mother of Revolution, the headline proclaimed. Victor traced the faces of the 3 boys with his finger. They would be 7 now, the age when he had built his first computer with his father. They had his jawline, his height potential, but Lena's expressive eyes and determined set of mouth. His assistant knocked gently. Mr. Hayes, the emergency board call is starting in 5 minutes. They're asking about the class action lawsuit. Victor closed the magazine, his expression hardening with recognition and alarm. The empire he'd built, partially on ideas he'd taken from Lena, was beginning to crumble under regulatory scrutiny and customer dissatisfaction, while her star rose unchecked. Meanwhile, in Boston, Lena reviewed the final itinerary for the New York conference with her assistant. The boys are very excited about their first official business trip, she said. They've been planning their New York adventures for weeks. I've arranged a suite at the Four Seasons, her assistant replied, handing her a folder with the complete conference schedule, a document Lena, overwhelmed with preparations, would not have time to read thoroughly before departure. Perfect, Lena said, slipping the unread program into her briefcase. It's time the boys see this side of the business world. As she fell asleep in her Cambridge home that night, with her 3 sons safely dreaming in their rooms down the hall, Lena had no idea that in less than 24 hours she would come face to face with the man who had abandoned her at her most vulnerable moment, and that this encounter would forever change the power dynamic between them. The New York skyline glittered through the windows of the Four Seasons suite as Lena helped the triplets button their matching navy blazers. The boys had insisted on dressing formally for their first official business appearance, determined to be professional consultants, as they proudly told everyone. "Does my tie look straight?" Raphael asked, tugging at the small blue silk accessory that matched his brother's. "Perfect," Lena assured him, smoothing a wayward curl from his forehead. "You all look incredibly handsome." Miguel meticulously checked his tablet, where he had downloaded the conference schedule. "Your keynote is tomorrow at 10, but tonight's reception starts in 30 minutes, Mama." "Always the organized one," Lena smiled, adjusting her own midnight blue sheath dress, a far cry from the second-hand clothes she'd worn during those early desperate days. The Louboutin heels she slipped into had been a splurge after closing their latest round of funding, a personal reminder of how far she'd come. Gabriel approached, inspecting her appearance with a critical eye. "You look like a queen, Mama, the most beautiful at the party." "Flattery will not get you extra dessert," Lena laughed, though her heart swelled with love. The Metropolitan Pavilion glowed with subdued elegance as they arrived, photographers capturing the entrance of the Morera family that had become something of a legend in medical technology circles. Flashbulbs popped as the triplets flanked their mother, their identical faces serious and poised beyond their 7 years. Inside, the reception buzzed with the elite of medical technology, hospital administrators in conservative suits, venture capitalists scanning the room for the next big investment, physicians discussing implementation challenges. Lena navigated this world with practiced ease now, a stark contrast to the overwhelmed immigrant who had once struggled to be taken seriously. The triplets, miniature ambassadors in their blazers, charmed executives effortlessly. "We're junior consultants at Maternitech," Raphael explained to an impressed hospital CEO. "I design the user interfaces. I test the algorithms," added Miguel with perfect seriousness. "And I make sure real people can actually use it," Gabriel completed, earning a chuckle from the executive. Lena stood across the room, deep in conversation with the director of the National Institutes of Health about expanding maternal health research initiatives, when she felt a small tug on her sleeve. "Mama," Miguel whispered urgently, his eyes wide, "that man over there is staring at us." She followed his gaze across the crowded reception hall, and the world seemed to stop turning. Standing near the bar, a champagne flute frozen halfway to his lips, was Victor Hayes. 10 years had etched subtle changes into his face, fine lines around his eyes, a touch of silver at his temples, but it was unmistakably him. He wore a perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit, a platinum wedding band glinting on his left hand. Their eyes locked across the distance, and Lena saw the moment of recognition hit him like a physical blow. His face drained of color as his gaze darted between her and the 3 boys at her side. "It's him, isn't it?" Gabriel asked quietly, his perceptive eyes narrowing. "The man who went away." Lena took a steadying breath, grateful for the years of board meetings and investor pitches that had taught her to maintain composure under pressure. "Yes, that's Victor Hayes." As if by instinct, the triplets moved closer to her, forming a protective circle. Despite their small stature, there was something formidable about their unified presence. 3 versions of the same determined face, all with Lena's expressive eyes and Victor's unmistakable jawline. Across the room, Victor seemed unable to tear his gaze away, his champagne forgotten. He took half a step forward, then hesitated, clearly unsure how to proceed. For the first time in her memory, Lena saw him looking genuinely lost. The moment stretched, electric with unspoken history, until Dr. Sarah Williams, the conference organizer, approached Lena with enthusiastic obliviousness. "Lena, I'm so thrilled you could make it," she gushed, air-kissing both cheeks. "And these must be your famous triplets. The audience is going to love when you share how they inspired Materna Safe." Dr. Williams glanced around the room, her eyes lighting on Victor. With a bright smile, she waved him over. "Oh, there's Victor Hayes. You two are our headline speakers tomorrow. Let me introduce you." Before Lena could intervene, Dr. Williams had beckoned Victor into their circle. He approached with visible reluctance, his usual confident stride replaced by something more cautious. "Lena, Have you met Victor Hayes from Hayes Medical Systems? You two are our stars for tomorrow's opening panel on the future of prenatal monitoring. The moment was surreal. The casual introduction of the man who had abandoned her during premature labor to sign away rights to the 3 boys who now stood protectively at her side. Victor's face was a masterpiece of controlled panic, his professional mask barely concealing his shock. "Lena," he said, her name sounding foreign on his lips, as though testing an unfamiliar word. "What a surprise to find you here." She extended her hand for a professionally appropriate handshake, her grip firm and dry while his was clammy. "Dr. Hayes," she replied with polite formality, "it's no surprise at all to find you. The medical technology sector is relatively small at the top." The uncomfortable silence that followed was broken by Raphael, always the most socially adept of the triplets, who stepped forward with extended hand. "Pleased to meet you, Mr. Hayes. I'm Rafael Moreira. These are my brothers, Miguel and Gabriel. We're big fans of medical innovation." Victor appeared transfixed by the sight of the 3 boys, perfect reflections of each other, with the unmistakable genetic blend of himself and Lena. Children who shared his DNA but whom he had never known. His hand moved automatically to shake Raphael's, but his eyes kept darting between the 3 identical faces. You're triplets," he managed, stating the obvious. "Identical," confirmed Miguel with a slight tilt of his head and the hint of a smile. 99.9% the same DNA, but quite different personalities. "We're the reason our mother created Materna Safe," Gabriel added, his voice clear and confident. "We were born premature. She wanted to make sure other mothers had better chances." Victor swallowed visibly, his discomfort palpable. "You seem extraordinarily articulate for your age." "We grew up in conference rooms," Raphael explained with unmistakable pride. "Mom always took us everywhere. We're part of the team." Dr. Williams, sensing the mounting tension, intervened with professional smoothness. "How wonderful! Well, you two will have plenty of time to discuss your technologies tomorrow on the panel. Lena, I need to steal you away for a moment to meet some sponsors." As Lena prepared to move away with the conference organizer, Victor's eyes remained locked on the triplets, his expression a complex mixture of regret, amazement, and calculation. "Boys, come with me," Lena said gently, placing a protective hand on Miguel's shoulder. As they walked away, she could feel Victor's gaze following them across the room. The remainder of the reception passed in a blur of introductions and small talk, but Lena remained acutely aware of Victor's presence. He kept his distance, but she occasionally caught him watching the triplets with an intensity that made her uneasy. Back in their hotel suite later that night, as she helped the boys prepare for bed, Raphael voiced what they were all thinking. "He looked surprised to see us, Mama." "Yes," Lena agreed, sitting on the edge of his bed. "I don't think he expected to encounter us here." "He kept staring," Miguel noted, his analytical mind processing the interaction, "especially at our faces." "That's because you look like him," Lena explained honestly. "He was seeing himself in you." Gabriel, always the most emotionally intuitive, asked the question that hung in the air. "Will we have to talk to him again tomorrow?" Lena considered her response carefully. "I'll be sharing the stage with him during the panel discussion. You'll be in the audience. You don't have to speak to him if you don't want to." "What will you say to him?" Raphael wondered. "I'll be professional," Lena assured them. "This is about Materna Safe and the lives we're saving, not about personal history." Yet as she kissed each boy goodnight and retreated to her own room, Lena's mind raced with the implications of tomorrow's panel. For years, she had imagined confronting Victor from a position of strength, and now that moment had arrived unexpectedly. As she reviewed her presentation notes, she couldn't help but wonder if Victor was doing the same in his hotel room, suddenly forced to reckon with the family he had discarded and the woman he had underestimated. That night, as Lena finally drifted to sleep, her mind wasn't on the presentation she had rehearsed dozens of times, but on the inevitable confrontation approaching. a confrontation for which she had unconsciously prepared for 10 years, since that night in the hospital when she had sworn that one day Victor would look at her and realize what he had lost. Morning light filtered through the curtains of the Four Seasons suite as Lena carefully laid out her presentation materials. She had chosen her outfit with meticulous care, a tailored navy blue Armani suit that projected authority without ostentation. The triplets were already dressed in their matching blazers, an unspoken statement of unity as they prepared for the day ahead. "Are you nervous, Mama?" Gabriel asked, helping her arrange her note cards. "Not nervous," Lena replied, straightening her gold Maternitech lapel pin. "Just focused." The truth was more complex. After 10 years of building her empire from the ashes of abandonment, she would stand as an equal, no, a superior, on the same stage as the man who had once deemed her insufficient. The symmetry was not lost on her. Backstage at the Metropolitan Pavilion, the atmosphere crackled with anticipation. Conference staff bustled about, checking microphones and adjusting lighting. Lena stood to one side, reviewing her presentation while the triplets waited in the front row of the audience, tablets ready to capture their mother's triumph. From the corner of her eye, she spotted Victor arriving. He moved with the practiced confidence of someone accustomed to commanding rooms, yet there was a new stiffness in his posture. Their eyes met briefly across the backstage area, and Lena noted the slight falter in his step. "We're ready for you both," announced the stage manager. "Ms. Moreira will present first, followed by Dr. Hayes, then the moderated discussion." The auditorium was packed to capacity. Hospital administrators, medical technology investors, physicians, and press filled every seat. As Lena took the stage, the spotlight illuminated her in a way that seemed metaphorically appropriate. From her position at the podium, she could see her sons in the front row, their identical faces beaming with pride. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear and confident. "Today I'm going to share how MaternaSafe is transforming maternal care globally, with data-driven results that speak for themselves." For the next 20 minutes, Lena commanded the room. Her presentation was a masterclass in precision and impact, showing how MaternaSafe had reduced maternal mortality by 78% in hospitals where it was fully implemented. The graphs displayed on the screen told a story of lives saved, complications averted, and families kept whole. "What differentiates our technology," she explained, moving to her key point, "is our patient-centered, data-driven approach. While competing systems show false positive rates of up to 28%, MaternaSafe maintains that rate below 3%, preventing unnecessary medical interventions." The reference to the well-known problems with Hayes Medical's system wasn't lost on the audience. Several heads turned subtly toward Victor, who sat with forced composure at the side of the stage. When it was Victor's turn, he approached the podium with what appeared to be confidence, though Lena noticed the slight dampness at his temples. His presentation focused on Hayes Medical's market reach and legacy installations, with notably less emphasis on efficacy data. "At Hayes Medical Systems, we also value precision," he stated, clicking to a slide showing their newest product iteration. "Our recent acquisition of BioSignal should significantly improve our algorithms." Lena smiled politely, waiting for the moderator to invite questions. When he did, she raised her hand first. "Interesting mention of BioSignal, Victor," she said, her voice conversational but precise. "They use an algorithmic structure remarkably similar to the prototype I developed during my MIT master's program. That same project I shared with you about, how long ago was it? About 11 years ago?" A murmur rippled through the audience. Victor adjusted his tie, visibly uncomfortable. "I believe there's some misunderstanding," he replied, his voice tight. "Our systems were developed independently." "Of course," Lena responded with glacial calm. "Just as it was coincidence that you launched the prenatal monitor 6 months after I shared my code with you, while I was busy single-handedly caring for premature triplets." The moderator, sensing the escalating tension, attempted to redirect. "Perhaps we could focus on current innovations. With all due respect, Lena continued, her composure unshaken. Innovation has history, and history matters, especially when we're discussing ethics in medical technology. From the front row, the triplets watched with solemn expressions. Victor, noticing their gaze, seemed to physically diminish on stage. "I'm sure we can discuss any concerns privately," he suggested, his voice strained. "I don't have concerns, Victor," Lena replied, her voice surprisingly gentle. "Maternitech surpassed Hayes in market value 3 years ago. Our app has 22 million active users, while your system is installed in just 840 hospitals. I'm not here to discuss the past. I'm here because we're saving lives." Spontaneous applause erupted from the audience, including many of Victor's own company's investors. His face became a rigid mask of professional humiliation as the panel continued. During the brief intermission that followed, Lena found herself surrounded by admirers and potential partners, her assistant scheduling follow-up meetings with remarkable efficiency. The triplets had joined her, fielding questions from curious attendees about their role as junior consultants. Victor approached cautiously, hovering at the edge of the circle until the crowd thinned. When he finally caught Lena alone, his demeanor had changed completely from the confident presenter to something far more uncertain. "Could we talk? In private?" he whispered, glancing nervously at the boys nearby. "About the boys." Lena regarded him steadily. 10 years ago, you declared they were a burden you weren't willing to carry. What changed, Victor? Isn't your career still first priority?" Before he could answer, the triplets moved to Lena's side, positioning themselves instinctively beside their mother. "These are Miguel, Rafael, and Gabriel," Lena introduced formally. "Boys, this is Victor Hayes. He's biologically your father." "We know who he is," Miguel replied calmly. "We saw your picture in Mom's file. She always answered our questions about you." Victor appeared simultaneously alarmed and hopeful. "You know about me?" "We know you chose your career instead of us," Gabriel said with a seriousness beyond his years. "Mom never lied about that." "But she never spoke badly about you either," Raphael added gently. "She said people make decisions for complex reasons, and that we should judge people by their actions, not their words," Miguel finished. Victor stared at the 3 boys, articulate, confident, well-mannered, and at the extraordinary woman who had raised them alone. For the first time in his life, the award-winning CEO of Hayes Medical Systems found himself completely speechless. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken history. In the background, conference attendees mingled and networked, oblivious to the momentous reunion occurring in their midst. "They're extraordinary," Victor finally managed, his voice barely audible. "Yes, they are," Lena agreed, her hand resting protectively on Gabriel's shoulder. "I never imagined—" He trailed off, unable to complete the thought. "That's the problem, Victor," Lena replied softly. "You never imagined anyone's future but your own." A conference assistant approached, breaking the tension. "Ms. Moreira, your next panel starts in 5 minutes." With a nod, Lena guided the triplets away, leaving Victor standing alone amidst the crowd. As they walked toward the next session, Raphael looked up at his mother. "He seemed sad," he observed. "Sometimes people don't realize what they've lost until it's too late," Lena replied, squeezing his hand gently. For the remainder of the day, Victor kept his distance, though Lena occasionally caught him watching from afar, his expression unreadable. The final session concluded with thunderous applause for Lena's closing remarks on the future of maternal health technology. As cameras and reporters surrounded Lena for interviews, Victor lingered at the periphery, watching as she navigated the attention with grace and authority. The triplets remained close, occasionally answering questions themselves with remarkable poise. In the taxi back to the hotel, Miguel voiced what they were all thinking. "He didn't expect us to be so normal, did he?" "No," Lena smiled, brushing a curl from his forehead. "He expected a burden, and instead found 3 remarkable young men." Later that night, As the boys slept in the adjoining room of their suite, Lena stood by the window overlooking the New York skyline. The confrontation she had imagined for years had finally occurred, but it felt different than she had anticipated. There was no triumph in Victor's discomfort, no satisfaction in his regret, only the peaceful certainty that she had built something extraordinary from what should have destroyed her. While the audience applauded her firm defense enthusiastically, Lena didn't know that the Wall Street Journal had already begun investigating the origins of Victor Hayes' company, and that in 3 weeks, his empire would begin to crumble under the weight of revelations he never imagined possible. The impact of Lena and Victor's confrontation rippled through the medical technology industry with surprising speed. What had begun as an uncomfortable exchange during a conference panel quickly transformed into the sector's most compelling drama. By the time Lena returned to Boston with the triplets, her phone was already flooding with messages from journalists seeking comment on what one industry blogger had dubbed the algorithm inheritance dispute. 3 more interview requests this morning, her assistant reported during their daily briefing. The Wall Street Journal, MedTech Today, and Bloomberg. Lena sighed, setting down her coffee mug. Decline the Bloomberg request. Schedule preliminary calls with the others, but no commitments yet. I need to understand what angle they're pursuing. The Maternitech offices buzzed with barely contained excitement. The confrontation with Victor had transformed overnight from industry gossip to potential corporate watershed moment. Employees who had never known the full history of their company's founding were piecing together fragments from conference attendees' social media posts. By Wednesday morning, Lena's carefully crafted professional narrative had begun to shift. For years, she had positioned herself as an innovative engineer who identified a market need, a clean, inspiring story of female entrepreneurship. Now, whispers of intellectual theft and personal betrayal colored that narrative with unexpected drama. "We should get ahead of this," Sophie Chen advised during an emergency meeting of Maternitech's executive team. "The story is going to come out either way. Better we control the framing." Lena stared out the conference room window at the Boston skyline. "This was never about revenge, Sophie. It was about building something meaningful." "I know that," Sophie replied gently, "but others will see a scorned woman taking down her ex, unless we provide context." The next morning, the Wall Street Journal published its first investigative piece, Materna Safe versus Hayes Medical, Parallel Innovation or Intellectual Appropriation. The article meticulously detailed the timeline of both companies' founding, noting the striking similarities between Lena's MIT research papers and the initial patents filed by Hayes Medical Systems. While carefully avoiding direct accusations, the journalist raised pointed questions about the ethics of innovation in medical technology. Industry experts quoted in the piece expressed skepticism about the likelihood of such similar algorithms developing independently. The mathematical foundation of both systems shares a distinctive approach to false positive reduction, noted Dr. Eleanor Patel, identified as Lena's former academic advisor. The statistical probability of identical innovation paths occurring independently is extremely low. Lena read the article twice, her expression unreadable. The story stopped short of declaring outright theft, but left readers little room for alternative conclusions. Her phone rang almost immediately. "They're calling it the Moreira algorithm," Sophie reported. Hayes Medical stock dropped 12% in pre-market trading. Within hours, other publications began digging deeper. A tech blog unearthed Lena's graduate school thesis, comparing its technical specifications side by side with Hayes Medical's original patent application. The damning similarities generated thousands of shares among industry professionals. By Friday, Hayes Medical Systems had issued a terse statement. "We are aware of questions regarding our proprietary technology. We maintain that our systems were developed independently and will address these matters through appropriate channels." The triplets, now back at school, remained blissfully insulated from the growing controversy, though Miguel, always the most observant, noticed his mother's increased phone activity. Is something happening with the company? He asked over breakfast Saturday morning. Lena considered how much to share. Some journalists are asking questions about how Mr. Hayes and I developed similar technologies. You mean how he stole your ideas? Raphael clarified, spooning cereal into his mouth. Lena raised an eyebrow. That's a very direct accusation. But true, Gabriel added quietly. We've seen your original code in your old research folders. Sometimes Lena forgot how perceptive her sons were, how their curious minds absorbed everything around them. This isn't something you need to worry about, she assured them. The truth has a way of revealing itself eventually. Monday morning brought the call she had been half expecting. Victor's name appeared on her caller ID, and for a moment, Lena considered letting it go to voicemail. Professional curiosity won out. Victor, she answered neutrally. We need to talk, he said without preamble, his voice tense. Not over the phone. Can you meet? I'm in Boston. You're in San Francisco. I'll be on the next flight, this afternoon. Please, Lena. She hesitated, weighing the implications. My office, 4 o'clock. The Maternitech reception area fell silent when Victor Hayes stepped through the glass doors at precisely 4. The receptionist, clearly recognizing him from recent news coverage, fumbled momentarily before regaining her composure. Mr. Hayes for Ms. Moreira, he announced unnecessarily. Lena kept him waiting for exactly 7 minutes, not long enough to be overtly disrespectful, but sufficient to establish the power dynamic. When her assistant finally ushered him in, Victor's usual confident stride had diminished to something more cautious. Her office, with its wall of awards and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Cambridge, projected exactly the success she had worked so relentlessly to achieve. On her desk, a framed photo of the triplets served as silent testimony to what Victor had discarded. Thank you for seeing me, he began, remaining standing until she gestured toward a chair. What can I do for you, Victor? Lena asked, her tone businesslike. He looked older than he had at the conference, stress etching new lines around his eyes. My lawyers are concerned about this Wall Street Journal article. My investors are asking questions. My wife is questioning everything. Lena observed him calmly, recognizing the fear in his eyes. Not fear of her, but of losing the empire he had built. What exactly do you want from me? She asked. An agreement, a joint statement, something clarifying there was no improper appropriation. He leaned forward earnestly. I can offer compensation. For you, for the boys. Lena laughed softly without humor. Compensation? Now? When my work is worth billions and your sons are nearly teenagers? What changed, Victor? Why do you suddenly care? They're my children too, he insisted, his voice breaking slightly. I have a right to know them. Right? Lena stood, her posture calm but firm. You renounced any rights when you threw legal documents on my hospital bed while I was in premature labor. You called them a burden. You said I wasn't sophisticated enough to be the wife of someone destined for greatness. Victor ran a hand across his face, visibly distressed. I was young, ambitious, scared, and I was a 27-year-old immigrant, alone in a foreign country with 3 premature babies in the NICU, she replied. But I found courage you didn't have. A knock interrupted them. The door opened, and the triplets entered, still in their school uniforms. They froze momentarily upon seeing Victor. Mom? Miguel queried, concern evident in his voice. Your assistant said you were in a meeting, but we needed the permission slip for tomorrow's field trip. Victor stared at the boys, his eyes revealing a mixture of belated pride and profound regret. You're extraordinary, he said softly. I'd like the chance to get to know you. Perhaps we could have lunch together, or I could visit you in Boston. The triplets exchanged glances, communicating silently in that way only identical multiples share. Respectfully, Mr. Hayes, Gabriel finally responded, we need time to process all this. We grew up knowing about you, but meeting you is different. We have a complete life, Raphael added. School, projects, friends, and Mom's company, Miguel completed. We're unofficial junior consultants at Maternity Tech. Victor nodded, swallowing hard. I understand. You have every right to set boundaries. Could I at least give you my number? For when you're ready? Lena intervened gently. You can send your contact information to my office. When the boys wish to, if they wish to, I'll facilitate communication. After the triplets left with their permission slip, an awkward silence settled over the office. They're remarkable, Victor said quietly. Yes, Lena agreed. They are. I've missed everything, he whispered, the realization seemingly hitting him fully for the first time. That was your choice, Victor. 2 weeks later, Lena received a call from her intellectual property attorney. Hayes Medical is offering $120 million for a confidential agreement and retroactive licensing of intellectual property, Sonia Takeda informed her. They seem desperate to resolve this quickly. I'll accept with one condition, Lena responded after brief reflection. 50% of that amount must go to a foundation bringing maternal monitoring technology to developing countries. I don't want this to look like extortion or revenge. I want to transform this situation into something meaningful. That evening, as the triplets did homework at the kitchen island, Gabriel casually asked the question that had clearly been weighing on him. Mom, do you think we'll ever want to know Victor better? Lena sat down, looking at her 3 sons, her greatest pride, her greatest achievement. That's a decision only you can make when you're ready. Regardless of what you choose, I want you to know you were never a burden. You were the force that drove me to create something meaningful. While Victor's empire crumbled under accusations of intellectual appropriation, Lena didn't celebrate his downfall, for she had learned that true triumph wasn't in seeing others fail, but in building something so extraordinary that it made her past abandonment merely a minor chapter in her success story. The afternoon sun bathed the Maternitech headquarters in golden light as Lena reviewed the quarterly reports on her tablet. 1 year had passed since the confrontation with Victor at the New York conference, a year of profound change for both their companies and their personal lives. Maternitech had expanded exponentially, now operating in 47 countries with over 2,000 employees worldwide. The settlement money from Hayes Medical Systems had established the Maternal Health Innovation Foundation, already bringing monitoring technology to rural clinics in Brazil, Kenya, and India. The installation team in Mumbai just reported successful implementation in all 20 target hospitals, announced her chief operating officer during their morning video conference. That's 3 weeks ahead of schedule. Lena nodded with satisfaction. And the training program for local healthcare workers? 98% completion rate. They're already using the system independently. These achievements felt more meaningful than any industry award or financial milestone. The MaternaSafe app now had over 22 million active users worldwide, with documented evidence of saving more than 15,000 lives in the past year alone. Lena closed her laptop and gazed at the 3 framed photographs on her desk, a progression that told the story of her journey. The first showed her holding 3 tiny premature infants in the NICU. The second captured her first office with the triplets playing under her desk, and the most recent displayed 3 confident 11-year-old boys standing beside their mother at the Global Health Innovation Awards. The triplets had grown remarkably in the year since meeting Victor. Miguel, still the mathematical prodigy, had developed a simplified version of the MaternaSafe algorithm that could run on basic smartphones for developing markets. Raphael continued to express himself through art, his designs now incorporated into the company's visual branding. Gabriel had established a student volunteer program at his school, connecting children with humanitarian technology initiatives. The intercom buzzed softly. Ms. Moreira, the boys have arrived from school. Moments later, the triplets burst into her office with the controlled energy of pre-teens aware of their surroundings yet still exuberantly youthful. Mom, Mr. Edwards said my code optimization might actually be implemented in the next update, Miguel exclaimed, dropping his backpack on the floor. "And my poster design won the school contest," Raphael added, pulling a rolled tube from his bag. "It's about technology access in underprivileged communities." Gabriel, quieter than his brothers but no less enthusiastic, placed a folder on her desk. 23 students signed up for the volunteer program. We're organizing a fundraiser for the foundation." Lena embraced each of them, marveling at how they'd grown, not just physically but in their developing sense of purpose. "I'm proud of all of you," she said. "Now, do you remember what's happening tomorrow?" The three exchanged glances before Miguel answered, "Our second meeting with Victor." 2 months earlier, after careful consideration and family therapy sessions, the triplets had decided they wanted limited, structured contact with their biological father. The first meeting had been brief, lunch at a neutral restaurant with Lena present. Victor had been nervous, overcompensating with expensive gifts that the boys politely declined. "Are you still comfortable with me not attending this time?" Lena asked, studying their expressions. "We'll be fine, Mom," Raphael assured her. "Dr. Martinez said it's important for us to establish our own relationship with him, whatever that looks like." "And Mrs. Pereira will be at the house the whole time," Gabriel added, referring to their longtime neighbor who had become a surrogate grandmother. That evening, as Lena helped Miguel with an advanced coding problem, her phone buzzed with a news alert. Former Hayes Medical CEO Victor Hayes launches nonprofit focused on medical technology ethics. The accompanying photo showed a more subdued Victor than the ambitious entrepreneur she had known, his expression thoughtful rather than triumphant. The Hayes medical systems that Victor had built had undergone dramatic changes in the past year. Following the intellectual property settlement with Maternitech, an internal investigation had revealed other ethical lapses. The board had removed Victor as CEO, though he retained a significant ownership stake. The company now operated under new leadership, with a licensing agreement to use Maternitech's more accurate algorithms. Victor himself had seemingly undergone a personal transformation. Divorced from his wife of 5 years, he had stepped away from daily business operations to establish the Healthcare Innovation Ethics Institute. His public statements acknowledged past mistakes without specifically mentioning Lena or the triplets, a discretion she appreciated. The following morning, Lena's assistant reminded her of another significant upcoming event. "The National Healthcare Technology Conference called to confirm your keynote for next month. Same event as last year, but they'd like you to focus on your journey this time." Lena smiled at the symmetry. 1 year ago, that conference had been the catalyst for a long overdue reckoning. Now it would be an opportunity to reflect on the extraordinary path that had brought her to this moment. The preparation for New York was different this time. The triplets, now experienced travelers, packed their own bags and researched museums and attractions they wanted to visit. "Can we go to the Natural History Museum this time?" Raphael asked, marking locations on a digital map. "Absolutely," Lena promised. "We'll make time for that." When they arrived at the conference center the following month, Lena felt none of the tension that had characterized their previous visit. The triplets moved confidently through the registration area, nodding at industry figures they recognized from prior events. Standing at the podium the next morning, Lena surveyed the packed auditorium. Her crimson power suit, a deliberate departure from the subdued navy of last year, caught the stage lights as she began her address. "Transforming adversity into purpose isn't just a motivational phrase," she stated, her voice clear and confident. "It's a survival strategy. A decade ago, I found myself alone with 3 premature infants, no support system, and an unfinished degree. Today, those same circumstances that seemed insurmountable became the foundation for technology that's saving lives worldwide." From her vantage point, Lena noticed Victor seated discreetly at the back of the hall. Their eyes met briefly, not in challenge but in quiet acknowledgement. "The true measure of success isn't market valuation or investment rounds," she continued. "It's measured in lives saved, in families kept intact, in children who grow up knowing their worth." The audience listened in complete silence. captivated by her authentic presentation of triumph over adversity. Sometimes what appears to be our end is merely the beginning of something far greater than we could imagine, she concluded, her gaze sweeping across the rapt faces before her. The standing ovation lasted nearly 2 minutes, the triplets applauding proudly from the front row. As Lena descended from the stage, surrounded by admirers and well-wishers, she caught a glimpse of Victor slipping quietly toward the exit. Later that afternoon, they crossed paths briefly in a quiet hallway. "Remarkable presentation," he said sincerely. "You've built something extraordinary, Lena." "Thank you," she replied, accepting the compliment with grace. The bitterness that had once colored their interactions had dissipated, replaced by a complex but peaceful acknowledgement of their shared history. "The boys mentioned they enjoyed our lunch last week," he added hesitantly. "I'm trying to be better." "I know," Lena said simply. "That matters." The final day of their New York trip found the Moreira family at the top of the Empire State Building. As twilight descended, the city transformed into a glittering tapestry of lights stretching to the horizon. "It's like looking at stars," Raphael mused, sketching the skyline in his notebook. "Or a giant circuit board," Miguel countered, always seeing patterns and connections. Gabriel leaned against the railing beside his mother. "Do you think you'll ever get married, Mom? Find someone to complete our family?" Lena wrapped an arm around his shoulders. "Our family is already complete," she assured him, "though I've learned never to say never." As Miguel and Raphael joined them, the four Moreiras stood silently, absorbing the magnificent view. Standing atop the Empire State Building with her 3 extraordinary sons beside her and a global empire under her command, Lena Moreira finally understood the deepest truth of her journey. The abandonment that should have destroyed her had become the foundation upon which she built not just a business empire, but a life of purpose and meaning that never would have been possible if Victor hadn't left, transforming what had seemed a curse into the greatest gift she could have received. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen,